Well, like, it's been a wee while since I've done one of these wee videos, and it's pretty typical, in fairness, because all week it's been pretty nice weather, which makes a change as far as this year is concerned. And the one day that I decide to come to Loch Ness, it's not as nice as the previous days. Still got a wee bit of a sunset, like, don't get me wrong, but I mean, the last few nights the sky was glowing orange. Whereas this time around it's pretty pitiful in comparison. Anyway. So, the anniversary, the 10-year anniversary of the Scottish independence referendum of 2014 just came by. And in the Scottish Parliament we had, of course, a motion / debate. For anybody that's not aware of this concept, and I don't blame you if you're not aware, it's when parliamentarians take turns to read from their A4 piece of paper something that their civil servants have written on their behalf, more often than not. Sometimes it's classified as a debate, other times not so much, but regardless, 9 times out of 10 there's absolutely no point to the waste of time that takes place for an hour to 2 hours. And in this instance, this was no different. 10-year anniversary since losing a referendum was basically the premise of the debate, or as Kirsty Blackman would say, the premise of the debate. And Scotland is no further forward, politically speaking, than it was prior to the motion taking place. But regardless, the same proverbial talking points were rehashed and restated for the records. Revisionist history was out in full force yet again. The bullshit, such as Scotland voted in 2014 to stay in the UK because of promises made relating to our EU membership. And this was applauded. And then the next dickhead from the SNP or the Greens would take to the podium to say the same nonsense, and this went on and on and on, with the occasional intervention or counter statement from a Tory or a Labour MSP, banging on about my union. At no point do any of these people ever just stop to think to themselves, I know what I could do to derail this whole debate / motion. Call them out on the revisionism. No, it's better to just play along, regardless. And that's actually, on a side note, that's what pisses me off. Well, I mean, the whole thing pisses me off, but it's like the Tories and Labour, etc., they come away with really cringy fucking rebuttals, you know. Oh, well, they voted to stay in the Union in 2014 because they just love the Union so much. And it's like, really, you're going to have to do a bit better than that, like, considering the fact the whole establishment is allowing the SNP's independence narrative to be solidified, etc. But anyway, I'm getting away off topic. So that then followed, there was an article that I've seen just a few days ago in the National from Baldy Boy, Stephen Flynn. And he said, he quoted his own article, bit of self-promo for himself, and he quoted himself on Twitter or X and said that the history of Scotland was carved by the Scots carved the history of Scotland and will carve the future. Scots. Yeah. The same people who bang on about needing more immigrants into the country because we're not having enough children. The same people that would buckle if you had the temerity to point out or ask them, to explain what a Scot is. But yet, Scots carved our history. The Scots carved Scottish history. I mean, these people have absolutely no shame. They sort of target nationalistic heartstrings by, coming away with the occasional nationalistic talking points when it suits them. But the reality of the matter is they're absolutely full of shit. That's not the topic of said wee video that I'm doing here as the sun begins to set. And in the last few days in the Parliament, there's been yet another debate / motion, which is about Agenda 2030. You know, the sort of agenda that people are called and considered conspiratorial for bringing up? Oh yeah. Despite the fact the National Performance Framework, which is the sort of entity that Alex Salmond created in 2007, where every single Scottish policy allegedly is based on. To put it into layman's terms, before I even get myself tongue-tied, effectively the National Performance Framework sets out annual outcomes for the nation to reach targets effectively to be achieved, and as a consequence of every policy that comes out is effectively, allegedly designed in order to help achieve said target destination. And it just so happens that post 2007, you roll around to 2015, where Nicola Sturgeon signed Scotland up to the Sustainable Development Goals. You go onto the Scottish Government's website and it makes a claim to the effect of saying that the Sustainable Development Goals and the National Performance Framework work in tandem, with the latter being a localised way to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. So again, we had dickhead after dickhead after dickhead, irrespective of political persuasion, from Tory to Labour to Green to Lib Dem, all pledging their allegiance to the United Nations, all pledging their fucking allegiance to the Sustainable Development Goals. And it really calls into question all the talk of independence, doesn't it? You know, I could sit here and yammer on and on and on and on about national sovereignty and identity like I've done in the past. It really has to be called into question here. Independence. Even though they mean in the European Union, and I know that, right? Open and close brackets. But independence, while simultaneously pledging allegiance to an international organisation, an international body and all of their fucking regimes and agendas, such as Agenda 2030. You know? There was a man from the SNP, can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I obviously did put the clip to my channel a few days ago. He said that Scotland remains steadfast in its implementation of Agenda 2030, you know? Steadfast! Oh yeah! That's what we need. That's what we need, eh? Then you listen to enough of the rhetoric, irrespective of what the fuck they're talking about, they say it all the time. Sustainable this, sustainable that, sustainable this. It's no coincidence. Whether it be the never-ending talk of safe and legal routes for migrants to come into the country because of my migrant crossing crisis, or border crossing crisis, sorry. Safe and legal routes, this is a solution to stopping the invasion, as they call it, or stopping the boats, smashing the gangs. What's the solution? Safe and legal routes. Where's that come from? Sustainable Development Goal 10. Reduced inequality. Sustainable Development Goal 10.7 to be specific. Safe, regular, orderly migration. Or we could talk about children's rights, or just education in general. What's it? We've got Sustainable Development Goal 4. Education. Or climate change. Sustainable Development Goal 13. Everything centres around these goals. And that's not to take anything away from entities behind the scenes and whatnot, but for even an observable fact, without having to put a tinfoil hat on, an observable reality is that of one in which we can see with our own eyes that our government, our puppet government, our glorified council, do nothing other than yammer on about policies and implement shite and green light shite, because that is exactly what the National Performance Framework says they must do, all courtesy of the Sustainable Development Goals. So when they talk about independence, you have to call into question, what the fuck are they talking about? Climate change is another one. Recently the climate change, I can't remember the name of it now, forgive me for that one, but basically I'm getting bitten by midges here, which is really annoying me. They basically have come out with an updated plan for like green economy going forward, and the same BS came out again. You know, oh, last year, hottest on record, we need to do this, we need to do that. carbon capture. You know, everything's about reducing CO2, a green, socially just transition, moving away from oil and gas, in favour of renewable energy. Everything's about the green revolution, etc., etc. Sustainable Development Goal 13, right? And you have these fucking wankers standing in our parliament who simultaneously insult your intelligence while waving two fingers up in your face when they bang on about independence and the Scots, the people of Scotland. You know, it's Scotland's right to choose, etc., etc. But yet they'll spend 95% of the time standing there with their A4 pieces of paper, reading out scripts, courtesy of civil servants, where they parrot United Nations talking points, or WHO talking points, or their Climate Change Committee talking points, etc. All the experts have said that, you know, we need to accelerate, etc., etc. Like, at what point is there a democratic process in all of this, you know? These political concepts, such as climate change, have become so solidified as fact that they supersede politics now. So irrespective of political party, whether it's Tory, whether it's Lib Dem, Green, SNP, etc., etc., they all agree, there's a unanimous agreement within our cross-party consensus even, that climate change, for example, is in fact exactly how it is described to be. The only thing that they might disagree on is how to go about rectifying the issue. Right? There's nobody standing up and saying it's a load of bullshit. Now, somebody to push back against me would say, oh, well, that's just your bias, that's why you feel the way. No, it's not. But I mean, there's clearly a bit more than meets the eye going on here. There is absolutely no pushback. Where's the democracy in that? There is no democracy in that. Where's the democracy when they're banging on about the people of Scotland, our right to choose, etc.? Where is the fucking democracy when it comes to us deciding whether or not we want open borders and or we want to continue following the regime of sustainable developments? There isn't any of that. Scotland remains steadfast in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. That's what we're told. Says who? Says fucking who? Dickheads in that parliament. The climate crisis that they all refer to. You don't even need to be a climatologist to really see this for what it fucking is. I started this video off by speaking about a irrelevant, pointless motion / debate in our parliament where they were all yammering on about my independence 10 years later. Their referendum that didn't go to plan, right? If these people were genuinely concerned about climate change, if they were genuinely of the belief that there's a climate crisis, then why would they waste their time speaking about a referendum that happened 10 years ago? Why would they waste their time speaking about any of the bullshit they speak about? Why would there be First Minister's questions? Why would there be parliamentary debates in general? None of this stuff should matter because there's a climate crisis. We're all going to die. The world's going to burn to a cinder unless we implement radical change right now. These are the people that pretend, at the very bare minimum, they pretend that they've read the science is settled. They've seen all the data, the raw data, and if you'd seen said data, you'd be on the same fucking page as them. But yet they spend a good portion of their time talking about absolutely everything else going on. Strange how that works. You know? Surely the impending doom of a burning planet should be enough to, you know, put everything else into perspective. All this other stuff can wait. But no, we can just talk about independence. We can talk about the 2026 election. We can talk about gender recognition reform bills. We can talk about any other insert BS here. Planet's burning to a cinder, but hey, we got time to talk about independence. Planet's burning to a cinder, but hey, we've got time to stand at George Square and wave Palestinian flags and talk about how Nazis are not allowed in Glasgow. Yeah, it's like, okay. And it doesn't just stop there either. I mean, even the BS with the education, learning for sustainability, another Agenda 2030 fucking linked thing, UNESCO, etc. You know, teaching children about their rights is another thing now, you know. Politicising children, politically grooming. And then the SNP, this is a good one as well, they've got the temerity to go on about how the young are more in favour of independence. Okay, why are you celebrating that fact? I mean, at the end of the day, the young in this day and age are products of a totally politicised education system. So gloating about the fact that children are effectively parroting what the fuck you knew damn well they were going to end up parroting doesn't give you much of a moral high horse to sit upon, but it doesn't stop you fucking cunts. Doesn't stop them. Independence. Scottish independence, in the EU, of course. Yeah. Even the way that debate's framed, independence versus unionism, despite the fact it's literally British unionism versus rejoining the European Union, for a party that speak to no end about democracy and accuse their opponents of being democracy deniers, the SNP have done a pretty damn good job of denying democracy themselves, have they not? They did everything within their power in the run-up to the EU referendum to prevent the UK leaving the EU. Post-2016, of course, they did everything within their power to have a second referendum on the EU before falling back on their position of trying to have a second Scottish independence referendum. And in such times, of course, they've managed to suggest that a vote for Scottish independence in UF2 is a vote for the EU. So there's not even going to be an additional referendum in a hypothetical independent Scotland to decide whether or not we want to rejoin the EU or not. That's not democracy. Again, none of this should matter if the planet's burning to a cinder. These people do not even act as if they're concerned about the crises that they claim they're trying to avert with all their radical fucking policies. That's the laugh of it. It's the laugh of it, man. And then we come full circle. The Scots. These fucking people will tug at your heartstrings, harken back to days gone by when it suits them, but yet call you a fucking racist if you ask for them to define a Scot. There's nothing to separate you and your African Deliveroo driver. They're just as Scottish as one another. But yet, simultaneously, they'll refer to the Scots, disregarding completely in its entirety ethnicity. Unless you're Guerrilla TV, of course, we're all just a bunch of Irish invading descendants, of course. Yeah, good one, though. Yeah. Fake nationalism, disingenuous nationalism, deceptive politics, malevolent politics, all built upon a fucking stack of cards with a pretty little United Nations bow sitting on top. Food for thought. Peace.